AdventureX 2016 brought together narrative game enthusiasts, writers, developers, artists and gamers at Goldsmiths, University of London. Packed into the two-day event were dozens of exhibitors showing off the latest indie developments and a programme of talks, panels and masterclasses looking at the past, present and future of interactive narrative.
First of all, isn't AdventureX brilliant? Isn't it great that it came back again?
Charles Cecil, creator of the Broken Sword series, returned to AdventureX to lead us through the birth, purported death and resurrection of the adventure game genre.
Lure of the Temptress was our first game. It was the idea of what we call virtual theatre, and the idea that characters walked around the world and communicated with each other. It was very much like a text adventure in that you would string commands. Tell Rat Pouch to go to this place and then pick up this and then come back. And he went off and did it. And certainly one of the regrets that I have is that we never really built on virtual theatre. It kind of felt like it should have been really special. We tried to innovate. We've always tried to innovate because the wonderful thing about our audience, you guys, is that you love innovation. You'll forgive the most terrible, terrible things. If we get it wrong, we've done something new. You are wonderfully forgiving. By the time we finished Broken Sword in 1996, things were beginning to go wrong. The CD had come out, and publishers became absolutely obsessed with the fact that actually you could put vast amounts of cinematics on. And Myst was actually really good. I mean, it was fantastic. Seventh Guest was pretty good as well. The Daedalus Encounter was utter garbage. Sorry, is that a contentious? You're looking hurt. No? Does anybody disagree with me? Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't offended you, I hope. Oh, I'm sorry. But at least it could only go up from there.
Charles talked about the role that crowdfunding played in the return of Broken Sword, and the way new platforms and interfaces were bringing narrative games to new audiences.
We produced the game on, PC, Mac, Linux, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Apple TV, iOS, Android. I mean, we're incredibly lucky with Adventures that the point-and-click translates very well to touchscreen. I mean, some people would say even better.
Emily Short made the case that innovations in narrative design often appear first in interactive fiction, beginning with classic text adventures like 1983's Infidel.
It's the first game that really kind of extrapolates, okay, if you are this kind of character, this kind of protagonist who is trying to go through this space and grab every valuable thing you can see and exploit every situation you can find, that actually makes you not a nice person. And what is an appropriate outcome for behaving that way? So this is a game where you get all the way through all of the puzzles, and I know I'm spoiling this for you, but you've had a long time to possibly. You get to the end and you do not, in fact, make it out with all of your stolen possessions. And so that kind of raises the possibility of there can be a game with a goal state, but the goal state doesn't really reward the protagonist.
Emily also looked at the impact of the game Isle by Sam Barlow, who would go on to create Resident Evil Origins and Her Story.
The first point at which I heard of Sam Barlow was his game Isle in 1999. Every time you make a move, you get an ending. It gives you a different sort of resulting piece of story at that point. And those endings, sort of, if you piece them together, suggest this backstory of what's happened to you, this sort of tragic romance that you had that went wrong, and you were in Italy, things didn't go well. But this also is a completely different vision of what interactive fiction could be for and what it could be doing than a lot of the work that had come before it, because it's focused on this possibility of getting the player to play through all of these different short experiences in order to piece together a narrative understanding. It's not about solving a puzzle in the world model and overcoming an obstacle like a dragon or something like that. It's about piecing together this puzzle of what does this mean? And if I explore this narrative space, what do I get out of that?
Also returning in 2016 was New York-based developer Dave Gilbert. Dave gave the AdventureX visitors a behind-the-scenes look at his latest game, Unavowed. He looked at the conflict between instinct and experience in the mind of a game designer, and told us how he'd tied himself in knots by placing a police chief character outside of a police station.
I like to keep things efficient, so I put her outside the police station. But for some reason, when I sat down to write her dialogue, I just couldn't get into her head for some reason. I knew who she was, I knew what her backstory was, but I just couldn't get there. And it took days before I realized the problem. I couldn't get into her head because I didn't know why she was outside. What is she doing there? My experience, of course, taught me that it's better to have her outside, keep things efficient, don't waste the player's time, don't have padding, ticked all the right boxes on my list of the right things to do. But now my instincts were telling me this was bad. I bit the goddamn bullet and I added in another location and I put her inside. I put her at the front desk and I justified it by saying they were short-staffed and she was at the desk. But it worked. Envisioning her at this desk surrounded by mountains of paperwork enabled me to get into her head very quickly because I knew what she was doing and I knew what she was thinking. And her dialogue was all written in a day.
One of the highlights of AdventureX was Rhianna Pratchett, writer on Overlord and Tomb Raider, in conversation with journalist and writer Richard Cobbett.
Things like Tomb Raider, you kind of live around the edges, especially the secondary narrative. That's actually what I think the writers on the team tend to like the most, because you don't get the eye of Sauron on the secondary writing so much. So that, and the Tomb Raider comics I did as well. I could get a lot of stuff in the comics that I could never get in the game. Like Lara Croft dressed as Elizabeth Bennet fighting bad guys on the London Underground, which I think would be brilliant in a game, but it's no way they're going to do it.
How do you think that both developers should approach writers and vice versa? What's their first step to actually kind of get
Very gently, so as not to scare them.
Very, very gently.
Carrying tea and biscuits. Yeah, and I do actually think that this is an issue for a lot of developers, that they don't actually know where to find writers, and would really like some kind of writer zoo somewhere that they could just visit and have a look at all the writers. It's most kind of networking and referrals, actually. Everything I've got, I've either been referred by another writer or someone else I've worked with, or, you know, famously with Mirror's Edge, it was to do with a gay tortoise. Ben Cousins, who worked at DICE, lived in the same tiny Somerset village as me, and his male tortoise used to escape from his garden and come and sort of snuggle up with my male tortoise. And then they sort of, for a long time, they lived this kind of, they gave us their tortoise, and they kind of lived this kind of tortoise kind of semi-homoerotic kind of Holmes and Watson with tortoises relationship.
So is that they investigate cases very slowly?
Yeah, that's how I knew Ben, and he kind of sort of remembered me. Thought, that girl likes tortoises. Clearly, she's the one to write a
cyberpunk query game.
AdventureX 2016 closed in style with the irrepressible musical nerds Jollyboat on Saturday.
Got no eye, I use me hook to poke me face.
And on Sunday, the live interactive video game, The Dark Room.
You find a baby! You poke that baby! But this baby's ready to explode! You die! You die! You die! You die! You die!
Thanks to our guest speakers, our attendees and our supporters on Kickstarter, AdventureX 2016 was a welcoming, creative and inspiring celebration of the stories that make games great.